Sung-hyun enters the room with his guest, Haru, and calls out for Yoonji, using the name Luna. When there's no response, he assumes she must have gone out. Haru, curious about the unique name, asks if Luna is his girlfriend. As Haru prepares to leave, Sung-hyun thanks him for helping carry his belongings. Before heading out, Haru notices some of the items they brought back and asks if he can take a particular pen. He explains that it belonged to his grandfather and that he wants to use it for drawing, especially since work kept him from staying long at the funeral. Sung-hyun agrees, and Haru thanks him before leaving. Suddenly, Yoonji appears. Sung-hyun asks if she was in the study the whole time. Instead of answering, she points to the documents on the table and questions his connection to the innocents. She reveals that her mother believed the innocents framed them and caused Reamer's downfall. Suspecting they were the source of her family's suffering, she presses Sung-hyun for answers, hoping he's not involved. But her hopes shatter when he admits the truth: he is the vice chairman of the innocents. He confirms that her mother was right: the innocents deliberately targeted Reamer. His uncle orchestrated a broadcast that faked Reamer's heavy metal contamination, manipulating producers and researchers to fabricate results. Though Sung-hyun knew about it, he did nothing to stop it, making him feel complicit in Reamer's destruction. Overwhelmed with guilt, he sinks to the ground, apologizing. But Yoonji doesn't back down. She demands the full story. Sung-hyun reveals everything, from how his uncle and father conspired against Reamer to his strong belief that his uncle was behind his grandfather's death. Despite the weight of his confession, Yoonji remains oddly calm. Though Sung-hyun's uncle had driven her family out of Sigriel and taken their place, she listens in silence, absorbing the truth. On the other hand, Haru lies on his bed, deep in thought, replaying the moment he found the pregnancy test in the trash. The memory of his rushed call to Yoonji lingers, the urgency still fresh in his mind. Uncertain and restless, he picks up his phone and dials her number, needing to know where she is. After a brief hesitation, he comes clean: he found pregnancy tests in the garbage. Yoonji's immediate denial takes him by surprise, but instead of panic, he feels an unexpected wave of relief. With that reassurance, he turns his attention back to his unfinished manuscript. But just as he sits down at his desk, something catches his eye. A recent search history filled with pregnancy-related queries flashes on his screen. A cold shock runs through him. Staring at the monitor, speechless, his phone suddenly rings. It's his father. The moment Haru picks up, he's met with irritation. Why hasn't he been answering calls? Scrambling for an excuse, he says he's been busy preparing for the contest exhibit. His father brushes it off as a waste of time and instead tells him to come to his office. There's something important to discuss: the company's future. Then comes the real shock: his father wants him to take on the role of vice chairman at the Innocents. This conversation reveals a long-buried truth: Haru's father is Sung-hyun's uncle. Haru refuses outright, uninterested in the position. But his father doesn't let it go. He hints at hidden family secrets, specifically their grandfather's will. According to the document, Sung-hyun allegedly threatened their grandfather. Haru doesn't buy it. He refuses to believe his cousin would do such a thing, deepening the divide between him and his father. Their discussion is left unfinished, postponed for another time at the office. Despite his reluctance, Haru eventually goes to the office, only to find his father unreachable. Frustrated, he considers turning to Sung-hyun for answers, but that path is blocked as well. Caught in a tangled mess of family conflicts and unresolved questions about Yoonji, he has no choice but to delay the confrontation with his cousin. Back in his room, the weight of it all bears down on him. He pulls out the pen he took from Sung-hyun, once believing it to be just a writing tool. But as he examines it more closely, he makes a startling discovery: it's actually a hidden USB drive. Could this USB contain the evidence Sung-hyun so desperately needs? Sung-hyun's lawyer visits Yoonji's mother, acting on behalf of the vice chairman, who is currently confined to the 130th floor of Sigriel Apartments. He explains that this is why he's representing Sung-hyun in person. Suspicious, Yoonji's mother brings up her long-held belief that the innocents deliberately fabricated reports to destroy her company, Reamer. And she's certain that Moon Sung-wook is the one responsible. But what she doesn't understand is why this meeting is happening now. The lawyer wastes no time getting to the point. They have undeniable proof that the broadcast against Reamer was falsified, and Vice Chairman Moon Sung-hyun wants to provide this evidence. This revelation stuns her. She raises her voice, demanding to know why Sung-hyun suddenly cares about Reamer's fate. The lawyer tells her it all comes back to President Moon Sung-wook. That's the true reason for this meeting, they need information about him. As the conversation continues, they shift their focus to the president, unraveling more about his role in the company's downfall. Meanwhile, at Sung-hyun's house, he remains on his knees before Yoonji, offering a raw and heartfelt apology. He admits to being an accomplice in Reamer's destruction, weighed down by guilt. Yoonji, watching him, finds herself convinced Sung-hyun isn't the true mastermind behind her family's suffering. His remorse is too genuine, his actions too different from what she expected. But that doesn't mean she's ready to forgive. She lets her emotions spill out, admitting that she once wished for vengeance. When her mother's company collapsed, she wanted everyone responsible to suffer, including Sung-hyun. And for the first time, she says it out loud. Yoonji takes a deep breath and continues, revealing how her feelings towards Sung-hyun have changed over time. Though she once resented him, something unexpected happened, he captured her heart. Absurd thoughts crept in, thoughts of a different reality where they met under better circumstances, where Reamer never fell, and they could simply be happy together. She wipes her eyes and tells him that Reamer's downfall isn't his fault, and even if it were, she doesn't care. The pain he may have caused her doesn't compare to how deeply she feels for him. With tears brimming, she extends a hand to help him up. Sung-hyun stares at her for a moment, emotions swirling in his eyes, before finally reaching for her hand. He admits he feels the same, that his love for her is just as deep. Sometime later, Yoonji sleeps soundly, her breathing soft and even. Sung-hyun sits beside her, watching over her with quiet affection. He reaches out, gently brushing her hair with his fingers. The tender touch stirs her awake. As she blinks up at him, still groggy, he speaks. He wants to stop being just friends with benefits. At first, Yoonji looks confused, but then he clarifies, he wants them to date officially. He knows the timing is terrible. Their world is tangled in chaos, but he doesn't want to wait. If they hesitate now, they might regret it later. His voice steady and he makes a promise, he'll take full responsibility for Reamer and the baby. Meanwhile, at his house, Haru fixates on the mystery pen, turning it over in his hands. A realization hits him, it's a recording device. As he listens, his heart pounds. The recorded conversation plays out between his grandfather and his father. The implications send a chill down his spine. His father had been going after his grandfather. Questions flood his mind. How much does Sung-hyun know about this? Without wasting a second, he reaches for his phone to call him. But just before he dials, something on his desk catches his eye. A photo of Sung-hyun and Yoonji together. What does this connection mean? Over 30 years ago, when Yoonji's mother was in a relationship with Sung-hyun's uncle, he never truly respected her. He constantly belittled her ambitions, and when she announced her plan to start a cosmetic company, he laughed outright, mocking the idea as ridiculous. It was as if her success unsettled him. He never celebrated her achievements, only sought to undermine them. To him, her role should have been simple, stay home, bear children, and eventually marry him. Supporting her dreams was never part of his plan. Their relationship, built on his arrogance and her growing frustration, finally crumbled on a decisive day, marking the end of whatever bond they once had. Now, sitting across from Sung-hyun's lawyer, Yoonji's mother recounts this painful history. But more than the past, she shares her suspicions. Moon Sung-wook, the man she once knew so well, might have orchestrated the fabricated broadcast and stolen Reamer's business secrets to benefit the innocents. The lawyer listens intently, nodding. He explains that Sung-hyun is caught in a similar predicament. If she has any information that could help, they desperately need her cooperation. She sighs, torn between her lingering resentment and the knowledge that helping them could expose the truth. She admits she despises President Moon Sung-wook but ultimately agrees to assist in any way she can. However, she struggles to think of anything useful. Then, a thought strikes her, the CCTV camera in the vice chairman's study. It might have captured something critical. She provides the lawyer with the CCTV password, then prepares to leave. In her heart, she has already accepted Reamer's fate. Nothing she does now can change the past, and she refuses to be dragged back into a world where men like Sung-wook hold power over her life. But just as she reaches the door, the lawyer calls her back. There's something else she needs to know. He hesitates, then drops a bombshell. Her daughter is in a relationship with Vice Chairman Moon Sung-hyun. Before she can fully process this revelation, an unseen figure nearby discreetly records their conversation, capturing every word. At Sigreal Apartments, Yoonji and Sung-hyun sit together, still immersed in their conversation about their relationship, when Sung-hyun's phone suddenly rings. It's Haru. And from the urgency in his voice, it's clear he has something important to say. Haru wastes no time. The pen he took from Sung-hyun wasn't just an ordinary pen, it's a hidden recorder. And what it contains could change everything. There's a recorded conversation on it, one that might date back to a time before their grandfather's fatal jump. Haru's voice is firm as he tells Sung-hyun what this means. This tiny device might be the key to proving his innocence at the upcoming trial. Haru quickly sends Sung-hyun an address, urging him to come right away. Recognizing the urgency, Sung-hyun arrives and immediately asks about the mysterious pen and the crucial phone call. Haru, his expression serious, begins to reveal shocking information. He explains that his father had threatened their grandfather, even raising his voice to pressure him into changing his will. Then, as if unveiling a secret, Haru opens the pen's lid, revealing a hidden USB drive. He explains that their grandfather had secretly recorded his father during those heated confrontations. Just as Sung-hyun suggests they listen to the recording, Haru suddenly shifts the conversation. He insists there's something important he needs to say before handing over the pen. With tension hanging in the air, he finally asks the question on his mind. Haru gestures toward the girl in Sung-hyun's profile picture and bluntly asks if she's his girlfriend. Without hesitation, Sung-hyun confirms. In an instant, Haru's reaction is intense. He drops the pen, shattering it on the ground. Haru then pushes further, asking if Sung-hyun's girlfriend is pregnant. Sung-hyun, surprised by the question, confirms again. But Haru remains firm, declaring that the child is his. He reveals that he and Yoonji had been together. The woman who secretly recorded the conversation between Luna's mom and the lawyer was sent by Sung-hyun's uncle. She arrives with both the recording and the passcode she managed to obtain. Meanwhile, the president insists that what happened that day in the study must never come to light. Determined to erase all traces, he sets out for Sigreal Apartments, where the incriminating evidence is stored. On the way, he strategizes how to draw Sung-hyun out of his house, knowing he's under house arrest and likely confined inside. Just as he nears the apartment, he spots Sung-hyun leaving. Seizing the chance, the president uses his spare key to enter and searches carefully. At first, he sees no sign of a camera on the ceiling, but his persistence pays off. He eventually finds it cleverly hidden inside a book, strapped by a wire behind the desk. Racing against time, he considers extracting the hard drive to destroy the evidence. But before he can act, Yoonji steps out of the shadows, gripping a knife, shattering his focus. Meanwhile, Haru and Sung-hyun argue over the broken pen and Yoonji. Haru drops a bombshell. Yoonji's pregnancy is his. A flood of thoughts rushes through Sung-hyun's mind, but one thing is clear, he has to fix this, no matter what. Picking up the broken pen, he tells Haru that Yoonji admitted the baby might not be his and suggests they sit down and talk it through. Then, he asks if Haru met her through a girlfriend-for-hire app. Haru confirms, explaining that he hired her for a small investigation for his webtoon. He also complains about the fake name she gave him, keeping her real identity hidden for over a month. Sung-hyun tells Haru to listen carefully and explains that understanding who Yoonji is and why she became a girlfriend for hire is crucial. He starts from the beginning, revealing that Yoonji is the daughter of Reamer's chairman, who once lived in Seagrill apartments. He goes on to explain that their fathers deliberately brought down Reamer, forcing him into a situation where he could only stay in a friends-with-benefits relationship with her, as his uncle had threatened them both. Haru is shocked by what he hears, but Sung-hyun continues, telling him that his uncle had hired someone to carry out a hit-and-run on Yoonji after learning about their relationship. He explains that Yoonji continued working as a girlfriend for hire to cover her insurance costs, and they fought because he misunderstood her intentions. Then, after being arrested due to their grandfather's will, he became consumed by the investigation, losing touch with her for a while, which is when Haru probably met her. Sung-hyun tries to calm Haru down, saying he understands his frustration, but arguing won't help. There's someone else who needs to take the biggest responsibility, and that person is Haru's father. Sung-hyun believes everything, from Yoonji's choice to work as a girlfriend for hire to their current predicament, ties back to one cause, his uncle, Moon Sung-wook. Meanwhile, in Sung-hyun's apartment, his uncle is there, trying to choke Yoonji. An hour earlier, Yoonji was alone in Sung-hyun's apartment, determined to cook something special for him. Her thoughts kept drifting to the beautiful necklace he had given her before he left for his errands, and she couldn't help but wonder about its significance. Deciding to ask, she waited until he returned to inquire. Sung-hyun explained that when they first met, her eyes had reminded him of the necklace, which had great sentimental value. It had belonged to his late mother. Yoonji felt a pang in her heart, uncertain if she could accept something so precious. Hesitant, she wondered aloud if it was okay. Sung-hyun reassured her gently, telling her that it now belonged to her. Once everything was sorted out, they would have a lifetime together to cherish it. He placed the necklace in her hands and reminded her that they just needed to wait a little longer for everything to fall into place. With a heart full of love and contentment, Yoonji wished for Sung-hyun's safety as he left. She went back to her cooking, pondering how deeply Sung-hyun felt for her. Her mind wandered to a troubling thought: could someone so kind and caring really be responsible for his father's death? Her phone beeped, snapping her from her thoughts. It was a message confirming her appointment at the clinic for the next day. She mentally prepared herself to find out if she was pregnant. If the test was positive, she knew she would have no choice but to confess to Haru about her feelings. She was in love with someone else and couldn't return his affection. Just as she steeled herself, the doorbell rang, and her heart skipped a beat, thinking it was Sung-hyun returning. But when she opened the door, her hopes were dashed. She found herself face to face with a stranger. Meanwhile, Sung-hyun and Haru remained deep in conversation, working through the complex situation they're facing. Haru, his heart heavy with emotion, turns to Sung-hyun and asks if they should let his father take the blame for everything. He begins to outline a series of troubling issues, suggesting that their grandfather, father, and even Sung-hyun might all be responsible for the mess they find themselves in. Back at Sung-hyun's apartment, his uncle continues his search, unaware that Yoonji is quietly slipping up behind him, a knife in hand. When he suddenly turns around, she tries to strike, but only manages to graze his face, leaving a small bruise. With cold determination, she warns him to keep his distance, threatening to take his life. However, he insists he's only there to borrow a book. As the tension rises, he suddenly recognizes Yoonji as the woman his nephew introduced him to, and he expresses his surprise at finding her in his house. Pretending to approve of her and Sung-hyun's relationship, he continues scanning the room for anything he could use as a weapon. He casually asks about their current status, all while plotting. Once he finds something useful, he strikes her in the face, knocking her back. Swiftly, he grabs the knife from the floor and threatens her with it, reminding her of the promise he made to Sung-hyun about removing her eyes. Still on the ground, Yoonji urgently pleads with Moon Sung-wook to recognize that he's the one responsible for Reamer's downfall. But he dismisses her, explaining that Remer's fate was sealed long before, and he never approved of anything her mother, Kim Ji-yeon, did. Luna, quietly observing the situation, suddenly gathers the courage to act. She forcefully slams her head against Moon Sung-wook's, catching him off guard long enough to grab the knife again. As she tries to strike him, the attack narrowly misses, and instead, she accidentally slashes his hand. Furious at being wounded, Moon Sung-wook becomes determined to end her life. He grabs her by the neck, choking her as she silently pleads for Sung-hyun's help. In the midst of the struggle, he reveals a dark secret to Yoonji. He tells her that her mother severed ties with him on a particular date, which drove him to take drastic actions that would haunt her for the rest of her life. He reveals that Yoonji herself is the direct consequence of what he did to her mother.